Hi, welcome to Hollywood Crime Scene. This is Rachel Fisher.
Hi, this is Desi Jedeikin.
Today, we are going to start off our show by saying if you haven't listened to part 1 of the Sunset Strip Killers, go listen to that right now. And then come on back, listen to this. This is part 2 of the Sunset Strip Killers. But first, let's take a moment to thank our Patreon contributors. We have Joran, Thomas, Carla, Chad B. We got 2 Chads.
Whoa.
Emily H., who is someone I've known since I was like 3 years old, and we used to get wasted at Passover together.
Aww.
So when I saw her,
it was like for Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, I think she did it for Jewish New Year. She's like, Happy New Year, bitch.
Yeah.
Here's your Patreon. So thank you. I love you. That was so cool to see that in my email that you became a Patreon contributor, and I love that you listen to the show. We got Rocco and we got Michael. And also, I want to give a very special happy birthday to our listener, Eric. Happy birthday, Eric.
Happy birthday, Eric.
So exciting. So if you would like to become a Patreon contributor, just go to our website at patreon.com/Hollywood Crime Scene. And there we have lots of bonus episodes that are only available to our contributors, and they're really dirty and fun.
We think so.
Yeah.
Some people have even said that they also think they're dirty and fun. Oh, wow.
Today's show is sponsored by Press Juicery /not. If they want to sponsor us, we're welcome. We drink a lot of their juice.
I only like the specialty. I want the almond-based ones.
Because they taste like real food. They're
the closest. As Rachel said, they're a bit chunky, so you feel like you're getting something. Oh, it's sad. It's sad.
I'm a little loopy because I'm drinking. I'm not on a cleanse, but I'm cleansing the fried chicken out of my system from yesterday's crazy food binge.
You gotta do.
Yeah,
you got it. We're LA sevens. We're trying.
It's true. But when I stop at the airport in Cincinnati, I get bumped up to like an 8.5. It's great. Like if I'm on a connecting flight and I have to stop at the airport.
I think I'm an 11.
Okay.
Sorry.
Why don't you weigh in and let us know?
If you count my personality.
Well, if you count my personality, I'm like at 25.
Oh, boy.
All right, let's just get back to the show. Okay, so where we left off, Doug Clark had just met Carol Bundy at the Little Nashville Country Club in North Hollywood, which is in the Valley in Los Angeles. And like I said before, they were like the match made in heaven. They were the perfect storm. She was the dumpy, unattractive, quote unquote, lonely woman that Doug was so famously into picking up because he could get shit out of them.
Right.
And he was really good with his words, so he could tell them, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so amazing, and they just eat it up and give him free rent and give him money and whatever else that he wanted. And Carol was pleased to learn that Doug was also into her pedophilic tendencies. So,
I mean, you don't see that on any OkCupid.
You really don't. There's no checkbox for that on OkCupid. So they really lucked out with each other that Carol was like, hey, if you're interested, I regularly molest this 11-year-old girl who lives in my apartment complex. Why don't we molest her together? So they would have 3-ways with this girl and take photographs of her and keep the Polaroid photographs. So they were
Was this in the apartment complex, the girl?
Yes, she was living in the apartment complex. And this is the same apartment complex that was managed by the guy that Carol was hopelessly in love with before Doug. His name was Jack Murray.
The married one.
The married guy who was the manager.
Oh.
So in April of 1980, Carol purchased matching his and hers guns for her and Doug.
Aww.
How cute. What a sweet way to commemorate a relationship. They called these guns the toys.
Ooh.
Yes. I think it's very weird.
Did they use them for things?
Well, that was it. I'm like, that's very sexual.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
It's very sexual. On the night of June 11th, Doug trolled the streets of Hollywood in his car. He spotted 2 teen runaways while driving, and he picked them up. These girls were 15-year-old Gina Morano and 16-year-old Cynthia Chandler. Doug ordered Cynthia to give him a blowjob and told Gina to look away. And when Gina refused to look away, he shot her in the head and then shot Cynthia while Cynthia was still blowing him.
What? Well, that took a dramatic turn.
That escalated quickly.
Shit.
So
So
then
he shot someone in the head while they were blowing him?
yes, that is what has been reported. That is the
That seems
report.
quite dangerous.
It does seem
You'd think,
dangerous.
right? I mean, not that I have sympathy for him or his dick, but like,
This is going to become a reoccurring theme.
Okay.
In this episode, so we're just hold tight because we're gonna come back to this and we're gonna talk about the
Okay.
getting shot while you're getting a blowjob.
okay.
Surprise. So the next day on June 12th, 1980, the naked bodies of Gina and Cynthia were found off the 101 freeway by a Caltrans worker who was there picking up trash.
That must be the worst job in the city. Not the trash picking up, but they always find the bodies, right?
It's always a Caltrans
Yeah.
worker. So he's like, well, shit. 2 days later, on June 14th, the LAPD received a phone call from a woman claiming her lover was responsible for the murders. They get this call from this woman. This is what the woman said as the call, they immediately start recording the call.
Right.
When this woman calls in and is like, I know who did it. She said, what I'm trying to ascertain is whether or not the individual I know, who happens to be my lover, did in fact do this. He says he did. My name's Betsy. This woman also on the phone, during the exact same phone conversation, would also go on to call herself Claudia. So she had 2 different names during this phone call. Not the brightest tool in the shed here.
Right.
I don't know what the fuck she was trying to pull.
Brightest hole in the shed. I'm sorry.
God damn it. I just ruined my whole case for her being a dumbass.
Okay. Sorry. I felt like the audience would be thinking that, so I had to comment.
Thank you. I don't want to get an @reply or review on iTunes that says I fucked that up. So the woman also starts giving a description of the murderer after some more prodding from the police on the other end. He said that the murderer had brown curly hair, blue eyes, and was 41 years old. She also said his name was John. This, of course, was a description of John Jack Murray, Carol Bundy's ex-lover, the apartment manager.
Ooh.
The woman on the phone was Carol Bundy, obviously. Bundy also provided the details of the murder, including the weapons that were used and other details that only the police would know. So they're like, yeah,
She knows. But she's
knows.
lying, but we know. Yeah.
This woman knows what happened. Police actually found Carol Bundy's name in a search for the gun record, but inexplicably they never followed up with that.
Yeah.
Which is so fucking insane to me.
Right, because they actually had the connection.
They had the connection so early on, and they just never bothered following up with this gun that was a .25 caliber pistol. They're like, oh, the last person who bought this in the similar area in Los Angeles was this woman named Carol Bundy. We got a phone call from a woman.
Yeah.
They never followed up. There's gonna be a lot of really frustrating police work that was done in this case. On June 22nd, Carol moved from the apartment she had been living in into a place where next to where Doug Clark worked, which was at the Jergens soap factory. Which I don't know why it's so creepy that a serial killer works in a soap factory.
It is creepy.
There's something creepy about that. Is it because maybe I think of them putting the fat of the bodies into the soap?
Right. Or I'm thinking of like Jergens lotion.
Like Jergens.
That's like sexual. There's like a lot of things happening here.
I feel like Jergens really is the unofficial brand of jerking off.
Why?
Too.
Why
it's
is
always
that? 'Cause it's very cheap, and
because it kind of sounds like jerking.
is it like what your grandma had? It's like I am curious.
But it's always Jergens.
Yeah.
My boyfriend likes coconut oil.
Well, he's
He's a
hipster.
hipster.
Artisanal. I only jerk off with artisanal coconut oil. Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay. Thanks for dropping that bombshell. The next day, at 3 a.m. on June 23rd, police discovered the body of a woman lying fully clothed in the gutter on a residential street by the NBC studios in Hollywood. This was Karen Jones, who was a prostitute. She had been shot in the head with a .25 caliber pistol, the same type of gun used to murder Gina and Cynthia. Police also concluded that had appeared that the body may have been thrown from a moving car.
Shit.
So if you're following along, these murders are all like these bodies are being discovered pretty close together. This is like it's almost like spree-like killing in that these are days apart, sometimes weeks apart. It's not like the killer was taking a break for a couple months like a lot of other serial killers, sometimes years. They would
or just not
kill.
even finding the bodies for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
The bodies were literally starting to pile up. That very same morning, just a few miles away, a headless corpse was found in a Sizzler parking lot.
Wow.
Sizzler.
That's quite a...
Where America comes to dispose of a body. That's what I wrote in my notes. I guess I thought that was funny the other night.
At the time. You had to be there when Rachel wrote it.
Because I was like, wasn't there a slogan where America comes to eat?
Right.
And
yeah.
nothing
I mean,
really...
I see how you got there.
You see how I made that connection?
I got it.
So, bad publicity for Sizzler.
Right. And they need all the help they can get.
Gonna lose it. This corpse was Exie Wilson. That's spelled EXXIE, which, just side note, I think is a really cute name.
It is kind of cute.
You know, it's kind of like punk rock and sprightly.
Yeah.
It's cute.
It's good.
Exie Wilson. She was also a prostitute. And they found her laying naked by the dumpster behind the Sizzler in a pool of blood. Ugh. Like, what a way to go out.
Yeah.
Was
she shot also?
Well, she was headless.
Oh, right.
So
sorry. I forgot that.
They didn't know how she was dead. Right. But they're like, there's a headless corpse behind the Sizzler. But they did eventually identify her as Exie Wilson. And I'll tell you how. So police, through some investigation, they discovered that both Exie and Karen Jones, the woman who was found earlier that morning by NBC, had the same pimp. And he told the police that they were last seen together that night. Like, he had last seen them together at around midnight. So they were murdered pretty shortly after that, like a few hours only after he had last seen them.
Right.
And at this time, or at least in this case, a lot of working women would go out in pairs to be safer. And so these two women, they had gone out that night to look for work together, and they were not safe at all, which is really scary. Late one night on June 26th, this is just a few days later, again, a man was returning home to his house in Studio City. But upon entering the driveway, he spotted a large wooden chest just sitting there right in the middle of the driveway. And he was actually stoked when he saw it, because he really thought like someone had just left treasure. That's what he said in a report.
He left treasure? I'm sorry.
So he saw a wooden chest and he's like, oh, it must be treasure.
I mean, honestly, I'm mocking him, but that's probably what I would think too.
Like, ooh, what's in there?
Obviously, it's treasure.
So this man opens up the box excitedly, and inside was the head of Exie Wilson. Not
treasure.
Not treasure. The head was...
Damn.
I thought Desi would appreciate this. The head was found wrapped in a T-shirt that said Daddy's Girl on it.
Wow. I mean, I do want that shirt, but it is horrible.
I was just going to say.
I'm going to start an Amazon wish list. Damn.
Yeah.
That's like really fucked up.
It's really fucked up. Exie had been shot with the same bullet used to kill all the other women. This was clearly a serial killer. And it was also discovered that she was decapitated while she was still alive. The head was cleaned, and makeup had been applied to this head, and also semen was found in the throat. So it looked like someone was doing some skull fucking.
Yeah. Wow.
The chest ended up being traced back to a store in Reseda, which is also in the valley. All these towns we're mentioning, these are all in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, by the way, if you're not from here. So this chest that the guy found in his driveway was traced back to a store in Reseda called Newberry's. And the clerk told police that a woman matching Carol Bundy's description, right down to the Coke bottle glasses that she wore, had purchased it. This is a quote from the store clerk. She was dumpy and kind of ugly.
Wow.
Yeah. But she also said that she remembered her because when Carol had come into the store, she was wearing a pair of short black leather gloves, and that it was odd because it was the summertime in the valley and probably fucking scorching hot.
Right. Honestly, it's always odd to be wearing leather gloves in LA, right?
Always.
Is it ever necessary?
It's always alarming. On June 29th, another body was discovered in a ravine in Sylmar. This was 17-year-old prostitute Marnette Comer, who was found half naked, lying on her stomach and mummified due to the summer heat. She had been shot 3 times in the chest by a .25 caliber pistol, and her belly had been sliced open. It was later discovered that the Daddy's Girl shirt actually belonged to this victim, Marnette.
I was actually wondering where they got it. Not just so I could purchase it, but just I was curious, like, was it the little girl at the...
Right.
Like, where did it come from?
It was this girl.
Wow.
It was Marnette. So by this time, Carol Bundy, I'm going to refer to her mostly as Carol just because Bundy, I just think of Ted Bundy.
Right.
Carol Bundy had started to lose it mentally. And on July 29th, she got into her Datsun and attempted suicide by injecting herself with insulin and Librium. She also took a bunch of sleeping pills, but it didn't work. And the book I was reading, like I said last week, like it's very on PC. I discovered it came out. It was written in 1995, I think. And the book is actually a very credible, well-researched book. I'll post a link to it if anyone's interested. It's a compilation, like a bunch of different stories of different serial killers. And this book is really reliable because the author of the book actually sat down with all of the people he's talking to in prison, corresponded with them in some way. And a lot of this is direct, either quotes from them or accounts from them. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. And the book is also kind of snarky too. When it talks about Carol attempting suicide, it also mentions like, which you'd think she'd know how to do that considering she was working as a nurse.
Right. Duh.
So the next day, while she was still in the hospital, she called her old flame, Jack Murray, to come rescue her. And he did. When he pulled up in his van, she saw another woman in the car. How dare he? I think that's kind of rude.
Right. And it wasn't his wife.
No, it was a totally different woman. Her name was Nancy Smith.
Sure it was.
It sounds like a fake name because I googled her name and I couldn't find any record of this woman, but she's not very instrumental in the story. Anyway, so he shows up to pick up Carol, who had just attempted suicide. She's in the hospital and he's with this woman, Nancy Smith. So Carol sees Nancy and she was pissed and she's like, "Fuck you, I'm walking home." And she did. However, she did get back in touch with Jack just 4 days later, and they had sex with the 11-year-old neighbor girl again. So I just want to remind you that it wasn't just Doug Clark and Carol fucking this 11-year-old girl. It was also Jack Murray.
He was the manager.
He was the apartment manager. Yeah. Like, this poor girl was like, just all of these adults in her life were abusing her. On August 3rd, Carol had asked Jack to meet her in the parking lot of the Little Nashville Club. And when she got there, she found that Jack was already there outside fucking a woman named Avril Roy Smith while they were inside the van. They were outside the club inside their van. He's fucking this chick named Avril. Carol was so pissed and she just starts pounding on the door of the van like, "Hey, I know you're in there." And Avril got freaked out, so she left. Carol was not about to forgive Jack for this. This was the last straw for her. She was so at the end of her rope with him. She couldn't trust him anymore, but she still decided she was going to hang out with him. Jack and Carol left the club together and parked a few blocks away, and they started to fool around and get naked. Here's where things get real interesting. So Carol gets Jack on his stomach and starts eating his ass.
I'm sorry.
In the book, it described it as Carol parted Jack's butt cheeks and started tonguing his anus. So I feel like I'm being less vulgar right now.
I like that you explained to us both ways, though, just in case.
Just in case.
Guys, I'm a good person. See, I didn't explain it this way. Wow.
I mean, I was clutching my pearls when I read that. I was like, excuse me.
I know. I mean, it's very popular now, but it was a little more rare back in the day.
And for a woman to be doing it,
Right.
Carol was really a pioneer for female ass eating, I feel like. So she's face deep in Jack's ass at this point in his van.
In vans.
The year is 1980. So you can just imagine what this Chevy van looked like.
This is quite a scene.
Right. It's quite a scene. They're in the valley.
Ugh.
I wonder if
I would tell a screenwriter to return this. It was too dead on.
While she's tonguing his ass, she pulled. Sorry. I know. I'm a terrible person.
Okay.
It matters, okay? This is going to matter,
Okay.
and you're going to hear why.
Okay.
Just hang on tight, guys. She's eating his ass, and she takes out her gun, which is in her waistband, and while she's still eating his ass, she shoots him in the back of the head.
Wow.
And continues eating his ass a little longer
Wait,
after
it said
that.
that?
Yes.
Did she say that in an interview?
Apparently, these are all taken from accounts.
I mean, that's a nice little flourish, right?
Yeah.
Jesus.
I mean, she was dedicated. She's like, I'm going to started this job. I'm going to finish it.
Okay.
But Jack didn't die after she shot him in the head. So she shot him again a second time. But he still wasn't dead. I don't know how. But that didn't stop her from needing to kill this guy. So she took out a knife and she stabbed him a bunch of times in the back until he was finally dead. But she wasn't done. Carol had a thing for messing around with dead bodies, too.
She did?
Well, Carol takes the knife and starts mutilating Jack's butt with the knife.
You mean sticking it in?
That's what the book implied. There's two versions of this story about the butt mutilation. In the book, it says that Carol was mutilating his anus. So I imagine that's sticking the knife in his butt and carving up his butt. A direct quote from Doug Clark, which I've seen him say on an interview I've watched of him, is that Carol chopped off his butt. Yeah, and
Wait, where is Doug during this? He's just not around.
Well, we're getting to Doug.
Okay.
Doug's at home. So Carol's doing all this and Doug's at their house. And this is late at night. This is like 2, 3 in the morning. This is all going down. So after she mutilated his butt, Carol chopped off Jack's head and put it in a plastic bag. Then Carol took a bunch of porn that was in the van and scattered it all around Jack's dead body. His headless dead body, excuse me. Let's just be clear about what the scene looks like here. She took the head with her in the plastic bag and also took a bunch of pornographic Polaroids that she had found in his briefcase. And they were Polaroid pictures of him with the 11-year-old girl. Ugh. So she took those with her. And she also took his gun and his keys. Then she drove to a payphone and called her apartment up where Doug was sleeping in bed with none other than Nancy Smith.
Wait, what?
I know. When I read that, my head was just taken clean
This
off.
apartment building is like Melrose Place or something. Like, what the hell?
It's really is. I was thinking that too. I'm like, am I reading a soap opera? Like,
What the hell?
I don't understand like how this character.
Wait, have you seen a picture of Jack Murray?
I have.
Is he good looking?
He's fine.
Right.
He's better looking than Doug
Right.
Clark, but he's not. You don't look at him
nothing.
and go, he's hot.
Jesus Christ.
He just looks very 1980.
Right.
I don't know. Whatever. So I really wanted to find a picture of Nancy Smith. I'm like, what does this bitch look like?
Yeah.
So Doug is fucking Nancy Smith. This is the woman that Jack had brought with him to the hospital to pick up Carol.
Maybe that's where they met.
I don't know. And so Carol wakes up Doug because they're sleeping. It's like 3 a.m. at this point. And Carol's all excited. She needs to tell Doug what just happened. So she's on the phone, and Doug recalls that Carol had been giggling and whispering, like, oh my God, look what I just did. And Doug goes, wait a minute, hold on. Nancy's having a seizure. What? Nancy was epileptic. She was, in fact, having a seizure during this phone call. So he's like, I gotta call the ambulance. So he calls the ambulance, and just as Carol is arriving back home, the paramedics were there taking Nancy away to the hospital. And she tells, after the paramedics left and the coast was clear, Carol is like, hey, Doug, come here. Come to my car. Check this shit out. I need your help. I need your help disposing this body. And he gets in the car and he sees a head in a plastic bag just sitting in the passenger seat. And Doug threw up because there's a head in a plastic bag sitting, and he couldn't take it. And Carol was like, please, like, I need you to help me. I need you to help me dispose of this head first before I take you to work, because Doug worked early at the Jergens soap factory, so he had to go to work in like an hour. So on the way to dropping off Doug...
There's something always amazing to me about these people having, like, I got to get to work on time when they're like committing these heinous crimes.
Right. But
hang on.
I've got to be an upstanding citizen here.
Ugh.
So on the way to dropping off Doug at the Jergens soap factory, they toss the head out of the car window. And can I just say, I just imagine them tossing the head out the car window the same way that people used to just toss their fast food out of the car in the 70s.
I used to do that. My mom would say, clean the car, and we would throw it out the window when she was speeding down the freeway. We would just throw McDonald's stuff out there.
But that's what people did back then. They just threw their trash out.
There was no such thing as not littering.
And it wasn't until the crying Native American commercial that it became an issue.
Right. No, I do remember the joy. They did it exactly that way.
But people still did it in the 80s too.
Right. I mean, when I did it was the 80s.
That's what I'm saying is like
it slowly became more and more taboo.
I feel like
I do throw, sometimes I will throw like an apple out because I'm like, oh, that's biodegradable.
Oh, I'll throw an apple out.
Like fruit or something. I'm like,
I feel like that's, blossoming the planet.
Right.
It is.
I'm like, it's fertilizer.
It's fertilizer. It's fine. It'll grow an apple tree.
Anyways, yeah.
So they just toss this head out casually out of the car. And on August 7th, Carol invited one of Jack's ex-girlfriend over to have a three-way with her and Doug.
Jesus Christ.
So talk about insult to injury. She not only did she kill this guy, but now she's going to be like, and I'm going to fuck one of your ex-girlfriends.
They need to get a bigger circle of friends.
This woman's name was hilarious. This woman's name was Tammy Spangler, which sounds like a show dog name.
Right.
So her name was Tammy Spangler. Tammy ended up leaving after dinner, so they never ended up having the three-way. And Carol was pissed because she was really horny lately and she needed to have sex.
I get it.
So she's like, Doug, get in the car. We're going trolling for prostitutes.
Jesus Christ.
And Doug wasn't that into it, but she convinced him. It was like around his birthday. So she's like, I'll buy you a blowjob from a prostitute. Uh-huh. We'll head down to Highland Avenue, which if you don't know Highland Avenue, that's in Hollywood. That's a lot of working girls on Highland late at night. So guess it's been that way for decades. And they head down there and they ended up picking up a girl named Kathy. Before Kathy got into the car, she saw Carol and she made it very clear that she didn't do stuff with chicks. Carol was like, whatever.
Really? I didn't know that was allowed. Like, why wouldn't you? I'd be like, sure. I would think I would prefer chicks over men.
Right.
Like, if anything.
Right. So Kathy gets in the car and she starts blowing Doug. And Carol pretty much immediately takes out her gun and just shoots Kathy in the back of the head. Which I always imagine like, oh, won't fuck chicks, huh?
Right.
While he's still getting a blowjob.
Right.
So there's another head getting blown off mid blowjob. The bullet actually grazed Doug in the stomach, and he was like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? And
I like that's what he's mad about. The bullet grazing him.
I just
not the
imagine
murder.
it like a Ray Liotta character, like,
right.
I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking when you're shooting someone that way. It seems like you're risking, not that I care if he got killed, but like.
Again, this is going to come up again. We're going to get actual quotes from Doug about this issue.
Okay.
So I have not forgotten. So Doug's injuries from the bullet grazing his stomach, they weren't serious. And on August 9th, the Van Nuys police were called about an unattended van that had a very strange smell coming from it.
Oh.
This was Jack's van. When police arrived, they discovered Jack's headless body inside, along with all the porn strewn around his body. And they also discovered his wallet, which had his driver's license in it. So it made it very easy to identify this guy. And they also discovered that his wife had filed a missing persons report just a few days earlier. Police were able to trace Carol Bundy to Jack, and so they took her and Doug in for questioning. Tammy Spangler was also with them at the time police arrived at their house. I guess maybe they did end up having that three-way.
Okay.
So yay, go Carol. And all three of them gave different stories during questioning. Carol claimed that she was home all night during Jack's murder. Doug said Carol was out and that she didn't come home until late at night. So Doug really told the truth about the situation. Tammy just tried to throw Avril under the bus and said, well, maybe you should go look into her. And Avril was the woman that Jack was fucking in his van outside of the little Nashville Country Club.
Jesus. Avril.
Poor Avril. She didn't want any of this. She just wanted to fuck a married man.
Tammy's like, what about Avril? Like out of nowhere.
I don't know. I need to see this Tammy woman also. Unfortunately, police didn't have enough evidence at the time to hold Carol or Doug on anything, so they let both of them go, and they went after Avril instead, just based on Tammy's testimony. Avril not only had an airtight alibi on the night of Jack's murder, but also told police that she had seen Carol enter Jack's van that night. So police were back on the hunt with Carol. They were like, all right, let's look into this broad. Carol, like the idiot she is, wound up telling her coworkers that she had murdered Jack and that she had to leave early to get rid of some evidence. Don't you just love that? That she was at work one day and she's like, oh, sorry, I got to clock out early. I got to clean up some murder evidence at my house.
Jesus Christ.
It's like, and they were like, wait, what? On her way home, she called Doug, who was working at the soap factory, and Doug called her a crazy cunt. Doug then phoned the police because he was freaking out and said that Carol was setting him up, and he admitted to Carol having pictures of him and the 11-year-old girl. Oof. And that Carol was going to use it against him. So Doug was like, look, Carol has these pictures of me fucking an 11-year-old, which I totally did, but I did not do these murders.
Right.
He's not going down for that. Carol also called the police. She was pretending to be Betsy/Claudia again and told the police about the murders. Eventually, she did tell them her real name during this phone call and also gave up Doug's name. When the police asked her why she did it, this is what she said. The honest truth is, it's fun to kill people. And if I was allowed to run loose, I'd probably do it again. I have to say, I know it's going to sound sick. It's going to sound psycho. And I don't really think I'm psycho, but it's kind of fun. It's like riding a roller coaster. Not the killing, not the action that somebody died, because we didn't kill them in any way that they'd suffer. It was just killing them straight out. So she told them the truth about why she liked doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
Carol then turned the photos of Doug with the 11-year-old girl over to the police when they showed up to her house. And when they showed up to Carol's house to arrest her, she basically just showed them everything. She's like, yep, here's those photos of Doug with this 11-year-old girl, and here's where he murdered this, and here's where he fucked this,
Right.
and like,
I know she's horrible, but I almost admire the pettiness. She's just going to take everyone down.
oh, she's taking everyone down. So when police arrested Doug, he told them everything that he knew about Jack's murder, but maintained his innocence in the other murders, insisting that Carol was trying to blackmail him with these photos. And that's why he didn't go to the police when he initially found out that Carol had murdered Jack. During questioning, Carol gave several different answers for why she killed Jack, including that he stole money from her, that he was going to kill the 11-year-old girl, and even that he was going to blame Doug for the Sunset Strip murders, which did not make any sense at all. She really led, like, all of her statements were very meandering and misleading, and there were so many holes in her stories.
Right.
When Doug was asked about the murder of Kathy, this is the prostitute that Carol shot in the back of the head while she was giving Doug a blowjob. This is what Doug said about that. He denies that this ever happened, by the way, and this is what he says. No, man, I don't care who he is. Who would let a half-blind bitch reach over, shoot at the head of a hooker sucking his cock, and hope like hell she didn't blow a hole in his knee or chest? I mean, what if her jaw locked shut?
Exactly.
So Doug was like, hello, are we not talking about the obvious? Why would I do that?
Right.
She says that I shot these hookers while they were giving me blowjobs, but who would fucking do that? That's so dangerous. And the police were like, huh. Well, Carol continued to give police very misleading statements. They soon discovered that the same method and weapon to decapitate Jack Murray was used to decapitate Exie Wilson. This was the woman found in the Sizzler parking lot. All the evidence at this point was pointing towards Jack and Carol being the perpetrators of the murders the whole time. But Carol insisted that it was Doug, and the police just went along with it. This is where I just was getting so frustrated at the laziness and just the carelessness of this police work.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because in an apartment next door, I can hear the X-Files theme. I'm sorry.
Oh, that apartment's been on a X-Files binge for the past 3 weeks.
It just seems really weird hearing this story with that music playing in the background. I'm sorry, I realize you guys can't hear it. Okay, go on.
We'll add it in post. So... Sorry. No, it really has been going on for 3 weeks. So Carol also continued to claim that Doug had a thing for necrophilia and that she had seen Doug fucking a corpse on the hood of a car while it was still running. But I'm not laughing at that. I'm just still laughing at the X-Files. But the evidence pointed more to Carol being the necrophiliac, actually.
Right.
It's like the one who smelt it dealt it, Carol.
Gross.
And the smell we're talking about is rotting flesh.
Right.
And you're the one who's probably into it. As she had admitted to eating Jack's ass while she had shot him.
Did she admit that to the cops?
Yes, she did.
Jesus Christ.
Can
you even imagine being a cop coming into work that day and being like, okay, wow, you must hear the same boring shit day in and day out. I mean, even though it's horrible, a part of you is probably like, okay, well, this one's interesting. It's so unbelievable to me. I mean, what a
How
crazy...
was work today, honey? I don't want to talk about it.
Can you even imagine?
I can't.
I could never in my wildest dreams guess that someone would have done that. Okay. Wow.
So all this evidence that Carol is really the necrophilia, even that she's trying to pin Doug as, is starting to come out. So we have the fact that she was eating Jack's ass while after he was shot. And Doug was still vehemently denying shooting women while they were blowing him. There's so many more quotes from him. Why would I do that, dude? Why would I do that?
It is a good argument.
It is a very good argument. They also found a letter in Carol's car that she had written where she was talking about vaginal death spasms.
Jesus.
Which sounds like the greatest black metal band of all time.
Right.
Which really started, was one of the other things that suggested that she was the one who was fascinated with necrophilia. The letter also said how Exie's head had been stored in the freezer and that Doug liked to take the head out of the freezer and into the shower to fuck it.
These people.
They're awful. Awful, awful, awful people. Carol also said to the police that Doug had killed another woman who was Jane Doe. She was not identified. Doug had nicknamed the Water Tower Girl because of where she was disposed. And they found her body in an oil tank. And Doug was like, excuse me? I'm an engineer. I know the difference between a water tank and an oil tank. Why would I call her Water Tank Girl if she was found in an oil tank? He really did say, he didn't say that exact thing, but this was his direct quote. Only a layman who didn't know the difference might do that.
Right.
So I just think it's funny that he's like, wait a minute, hold on.
Hold up.
I need to defend my engineering degree.
Yeah.
Actually, that was an oil tank. Even though the police had way more hard evidence against Jack Murray as being the murderer, he was dead, and they really wanted to put somebody behind bars besides Carol. They didn't want their police work to be looked at as shoddy because this was going on and they couldn't catch this Jack Murray guy and he was murdered before they got him. They needed to pin it on someone else. Evidence implicating Jack Murray included a jacket that was covered in blood that belonged to Jack, was found in Carol's car. There was also a piece of scalp with blonde hair attached to it that was found in his van, but was never tested by the police. And neither Carol nor Jack had blonde hair, but most of the women that they killed did have blonde hair. Also, the fact that Carol just lied so much about what had happened, and she had claimed that Doug had even dragged bodies into the garage at one point to fuck them, even though no evidence suggested on any of the bodies that they had been dragged anywhere. And also, when they went to the garage, they didn't find any evidence of blood. And she's like, well, I cleaned it up, but the garage was dirty as hell. Like, no, you didn't. This garage hasn't been cleaned. The trial was even worse. Doug Clark's lawyer was fucking terrible. He was an alcoholic and he was wasted during the entire trial. I mean, like, it can't get worse for this guy at this point. He would fall asleep during the trial. Like, he would just start nodding out and Doug would be like, hey, you got to defend me.
When was the trial? What year?
Like 1982.
Oh, okay, so shortly after.
It was pretty shortly after. He was slurring his words. He was not being a good lawyer. He even said before it was time to plea, I think it was like during preliminary hearings, he was like, look, my client's guilty, but he's crazy.
Right. I mean, it's direct.
Right. But it wasn't the time to make the plea. Or it was like he said the things at the wrong. He was not good. He was wasted.
I'd like to just picture him like all of a sudden waking up and be like, order in the court, or like objection, like in some bad movie.
I just imagine Lionel Hutz.
How is he not taken off the case like immediately the first time he fell asleep? Is it just because people don't give a fuck about Doug, basically?
They just didn't give a fuck about Doug, and Doug was like, can I get a new lawyer, please?
Right.
And they didn't,
because he's not an idiot, even though he's horrible.
He's a horrible person, but he's not an idiot. So Doug ended up representing himself, which is a terrible idea,
but not
always.
Probably as bad as the drunk lawyer.
I guess not. And Doug was just being railroaded. I mean, they really wanted to just do everything they could,
right,
to put him behind bars, and they did successfully. Justice was served to Carol. She was given a life sentence, and she ended up dying in prison in 2003 from heart failure.
How old was she when she died?
Probably in her 60s.
Okay.
Or 50s. Doug, however, is still alive and on death row. He got the death sentence. He got the death penalty.
But was the death penalty taken? Wasn't that?
That's what he got.
Oh, he got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
he got it. And he's still alive. He's on death row at San Quentin.
Right.
And
'Cause
he
we don't kill people in California.
Right.
Pretty much.
Right, we don't. But that's where he is, and he still maintains his innocence.
Really?
Yeah. He's like adamantly, and I was looking at it because this is very fishy. I never side or believe. I mean, I'm not siding with Doug because he's still, even if he didn't kill any of these people,
He's a child molester.
he's a
and
fucking child molester, and he still knew about
What
these
she was
women, what
doing.
she was doing, and that these women were dying, that she was murdering them. So he's still a monster any way you slice it. And I've watched interviews with him, and he is absolutely, he fucking hates Carol, obviously. And he just goes on these rants about her, and like, he's like, I used to be an attractive man, and now look at me. I've been in prison. I have a beard and an eye patch, and like, I'm like, calm down, Doug. You weren't that hot
Yeah.
to begin with in the first place. But I was reading on Reddit, of course. I ended up in a Reddit hole, and I was reading different like people like, no, he is innocent. Yeah, he's a terrible person, but he's
innocent
actually
of these crimes.
He's innocent of the murders. It was actually Jack Murray, which I think is really interesting because
it makes sense why he was killed, maybe, or why she killed him.
Why she killed him, and Carol was really. I mean, Carol implicated Jack Murray in the first place during that first phone call that she made.
Right.
She just made, the description was made of Jack Murray, not of Doug. And she gave his name too to the police on the phone. So I just thought it was interesting because when you Google the Sunset Strip murders, you see Doug's face.
Right.
And you see Carol's face.
I mean, that is interesting.
It's interesting that he might not have actually done these murders. He might have just been covering for her, and also, obviously a really sick, twisted individual.
But then they also stopped. So that could prove that maybe it was Jack.
Right.
I mean,
because they did stop after that. And Carol was actually during the investigation, Carol was like, no, I swear it was Doug, because she was questioned about that. Like, well, we haven't had any murders since Jack died.
Got it.
And Carol was like, no, this Jane Doe, the water tower girl,
Oh, right.
she died this date. But she kept changing her story about when she died, so it wasn't clear. And the police just didn't, I was so frustrated reading about this
Because they wanted
case.
to just put someone away for it.
They wanted to put someone away. And I'm fine with Doug being behind bars just for what he did to that poor girl.
Well, it's interesting that he's maintained his innocence.
Right. All these years. He's
'Cause
never
it seems like
admitted
someone
to
you
it.
might want to just brag at some point to get some like cachet in prison or something, right?
And he's admitted to the other stuff. He admitted to, I knew
'cause there
about the
was-
murders.
yeah.
And I knew about, and I was molesting that girl. And I knew what Carol had done to Jack. Like, he admits to all that other stuff. Why wouldn't he just admit to killing people also? That's what I don't get.
Interesting.
So I really can't believe it, but I'm really leaning towards his innocence on the murders. Not that he wasn't a horrible person.
Yes.
He was. But the evidence really does seem to be that
At least it's reasonable doubt, right?
it is reasonable doubt. It really seems like Jack Murray could have been
I'm
the one
surprised with
killing
his
people.
lawyer, he wasn't able to get a new trial. Because that seems like a no-brainer, especially
Right.
with the death row
Right.
case.
I don't know. It just, this book that I read was the most comprehensive with the information. I was really shocked with how crazy this, I'm really surprised with how crazy this story is, that there hasn't been more movies about it.
Yeah, especially with the woman. Because you always act like Aileen Wuornos was the first female serial killer, but it seems like this woman really, I don't know if it was the first, but certainly like, yeah, this story is crazy.
It's really crazy. And I know they made that like TV show Wicked that was loosely based on this, but that was only out for like 3 episodes or something before it got canceled. I never even saw it. But I didn't know about the Sunset Strip killers and like really what it was about until researching this episode. So I was shocked. Yeah. And also, like you said, to find out that it was a female serial killer which is a lot rarer in the case of serial killers. You'd think it would be more of a sensationalized story.
And taking place in Hollywood and all of these elements, right? Maybe it was too gruesome.
Right. Maybe. I mean, it is very gruesome.
It's also a very sexual
Yeah.
aspect to it. So
And
maybe
there's-
it's just too much.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Not for us.
Not for me, but I just want to say I'm done. I'm happy to be done with this case because these people are absolute fucking sick, disgusting monsters. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, though.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I think, well, we talked about our Patreon, but we also have social media accounts you can follow us on.
Yep.
Email us, send us tweets.
We love hearing from you.
I think that's it.
That's it.
Right?
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
More taters, Mom.